Yes, welcome to the Biz Communication Show. I'm your host, Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy, bringing you tips and strategies that will boost your business. You want to be a superlative communicator. We all do. And that's what the Biz Communication Show is all about. Today, our guest is a communicator who has helped many thousands. He's a member of the Speaker Hall of Fame. He's received the highest award that the National Speakers Association gives, and that's just once a year. It's called the CAVIT. And he's a certified speaking professional. He was asked by Skype to direct their blogging to all 23 million monthly users. And this is most impressive. He has been in 44 countries working, coaching, and speaking. He joins us today to talk about the importance of time-honored communication principles and how to artfully use communication tools. So join me in welcoming Terry Brock from Orlando, Florida. Hello, Terry.
Hey, Bill, it is great to be with you today.
Delighted to have you join us on the Biz Communication Show, Terry. Knowing you as I've had the privilege of doing over a couple of decades, I know about your very early blossoming, phenomenal start in the media in professional communication in your home state of Michigan. You, as a kid, got into radio. Tell us about that.
Well, it was a real honor to do that, and they asked me to just come on and see what it's like. I was interested in radio, and I had been listening to that station and its member stations. There were three of them, the Family Life Broadcasting Network, and I believe they're still in Michigan today. And I had the opportunity to go work there to learn, and it was such a gift. And I'm so grateful to the people that were there then that helped me. I made some colossal mistakes at times, and I learned from them and got better, and went on with an undergrad degree in radio, TV, and newspaper. So I think it was really good. I learned a lot, and getting on the air at age 17, and then staying on for several years. I was working my way through undergrad school doing that. But it was always fun to get on there and read the news, and a lot of the principles still hold for me today as we work now in podcasting and with YouTube channels and communication tools like that.
Were you ever a DJ on radio?
Oh, yeah. I would read the news and then DJ. And the way we did that is we took these things called LPs, which used to be kind of old thing, but now they're very popular today. I mean, right now as we're recording this, they're popular. And I would cue them up and then say, and now, ladies and gentlemen, join us as we listen to the Bill Gaither Trio or something like that. I put in, there was a big group that was back then. And we'd play these songs for people. I enjoyed that. And then people would call in requesting songs. And that was fun. You got a chance to know some of the people, because there would be one guy that would always call in asking for the same song. And we at the radio station knew, oh, he's asking for that song again. It was a great song, but it was just kind of fun to get to know the audience that way.
I had a similar experience, not that young, but in my career, I lived for 2 years in Kansas, and I had done a little bit of radio work at the University of Georgia when I was on the faculty there. So I thought, weekends in Kansas, how can I spend the time? So I went to the only radio station in town. I remember going on about a Wednesday or so. I talked to the station manager, and he said, "Okay, we can use you. Can you be here at 5:30 Saturday morning?" So it wound up, Terry. I ran a DJ shift on Saturdays from noon until midnight. With both the AM and the FM stations. And I know you had one of the great experiences that I did as well. And you found out, you're talking about playing records. It was a great time management lesson, because we found out how much you could do in 3.5 minutes while that record was playing, didn't we?
Yeah, you cram a lot in there, rush it out and rush it back. A different world then, but we learn those principles. And I think that you can always learn principles and lessons that are good for life from whatever you do. That's a very good thing to do. I would encourage those who are young, and I would say young of 12, 13, 14, 15, get out and do something. Get out some kind of work where you're going to interface with people. You will learn a lot, and give opportunities to people like that. If you've got a 13, 14, 15-year-old in your neighborhood or in your sphere of influence and you can positively help that person, that would be a great thing to do. Give them a chance to get in there. They're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. You keep it limited. So we're not putting them in charge of the nuclear weapons, but we're putting them in charge of something that is reasonably good. And they make a mistake, we can quickly correct it. As a matter of fact, I remember one of the mistakes I made, Bill. This was a real doozy for me. I was reading the news, and there was a town just outside of Detroit where something was happening, and we were there in Michigan. And I said at the sound in the place of Hamtramck, and they did that. Da, 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 da. As soon as my broadcast was over, I hung up and said, "Now back to more music here on Family Life Radio." And we put it on there. The phone rang, and it was my wonderful station manager, Al Cook, wonderful guy that he was and is. And Al said, "Terry, do you realize what you did?" What? He said, "What's the name of that town outside Detroit?" "Oh, Hamtramck," he says, or Hammock. And he says, "Terry, do you know how many people know that it's pronounced Hamtramck?" And I said, "No, I did not know that." And he said, "You should have called me and asked." And I realized, okay, I need to find out. I thought something, and I guessed. I made an assumption. But he helped me to understand, you make sure you pronounce things clearly. And even today, Bill, this helps with the interviews that I do. You and I do a lot of interviews.
Yes.
Found it very helpful. And I'd say this to anyone that's doing interviews today with podcasting, with YouTube, or any form of video, whatever. Always ask the guest when you're getting to see them for the first time who they are. How do you pronounce your last name or your
Right.
first name? So it's a matter of real carefully, real slowly and carefully, because it might be one way that I think, but they do it a different way. But if they do it very slowly and carefully, go real slow for me here. I want to make sure I get it right. And then I'll write it down phonetically. That helps. Now, I don't always get it right, because even then, sometimes I'll make mistakes, but at least it helps the guest to know we care for them and we want to give them our very best.
I heard a quip some time back, which I've used a good bit in my speech coaching, and that is, you have to make sure that you don't put the emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Exactly. That's right. You want to make sure you get that correct. And particularly when you're dealing with people who might not be natively born speaking English as their native language in America.
Well, and then sometimes the spelling might be what we might be accustomed to, but a good example, I was a college administrator for a good while, and I lived in one part of Georgia where the nearest county was Houston.
Oh, yes. That would have spelled pronounced a little differently in Georgia than in Texas.
Yes. So I said, I was giving a talk one day, and I said, I'm sure that we'll get a lot of gifts from Houston County. Well, it's Houston in Georgia. And so
Right.
the nuances when you're dealing with communication, if for example, you make a mistake of that sort, it can throw people off from the rest of the conversation. And that's why you're exactly right that preparation is so vital. Now, getting back to your radio career, and by the way, there's one guy who did okay in radio who started a little younger than you did. A guy named Paul Harvey. He started at 14. I think he had a pretty good career, don't you think?
He did rather well. Yes, indeed. But that is the rest of the story.
That is. But what I want to ask you, anybody who hears Terry Brock on radio, on the internet, phone call, speech, presiding over a group, whatever, from the very first time that I heard you and every time I hear you, as you know, I'm a speech coach, and I am, like many people, I'm captivated and I'm mesmerized by your voice. And so you started in radio at a very early age. My curiosity, and I think the curiosity of our listeners and viewers, would be this: uh, how did you develop your speaking voice and your presentation skills? Certainly, you had natural gifts, but were there ways that you sought to develop those gifts?
I just worked really hard at it to get it right. But I tried, right? No, I'm just messing with you. No, I just thought it would be a good idea to speak clearly and to work on that. I did have a class in undergrad school. I remember voice diction and phonetics. And that was a class that was optional within the communication major that I had. And so I took that, and they talked about how to speak and to clearly enunciate and speak very clearly and eloquently as best we could. And I'm still working on that part. I got a long way to go, but I find that by practicing it and getting good feedback is important. You want to practice what you're doing, but I'm going to rely on what my friend Harvey McKay says. When he says people will say practice makes perfect, that's not true. Perfect practice makes perfect. So you want to get
Yes.
good feedback from others. And here's one of the things you need to do. This is painful. Matter of fact, it is so painful. It actually has been declared illegal by the Geneva War Convention, and that is to listen to yourself on recording. Listen to your audio, listen to your video. I know it's painful. It is that painful, but when you do that, you do much better. You can go back and you listen and you hear what you're saying, how you're doing it. Real professionals will do that. A buddy of mine, Carl Mecklenburg, is a member of the National Speakers Association, and he's up in Denver, where he played with a little team called the Broncos and was in 4 Super Bowls. Lost 3 of them, but he did win 1. But he was telling me what they do in practice. They have not 1 or 2, sometimes 3 cameras, or maybe 4, going over what you did, and you have to watch that. Even though they're not focusing on the voice, the principle is the same. You want to go back over it and make sure that you're doing what you need to do. And when, not if, but when you go, I did that. I can't believe I did that. That's good. You pause, you look at that and say, okay, how do we correct it? And let's make every reasonable effort so that we don't do that again.
Yes, and another thing I heard about practice is that practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent. And so
Mm.
if you're practicing the wrong way, you're just ingraining those mistakes. When I played golf for
Bingo.
so many years, Terry, I guess I would call you would call me a really dedicated uh, practice tee guy. I would spend hours on the practice tee. But did I improve necessarily? Not if I happen to be doing the same mistakes over and over. And it was when I got with a golf professional who could look at me objectively. And then, by golly, as you say, when video came into play, oh my goodness, Terry, the first time I saw my golf swing on video on a replay from a lesson, as the coach was standing there with me, I was thinking, now wait a minute. I thought I looked like those pros on television. Who's this guy here? But
Yep.
we're very fortunate, of course, that video is not something that's difficult to have access to. I mean, if you were to look at 20 years ago and advise somebody watch yourself on video, they'd say, now wait, I can't afford all those to pay to have somebody. Now we got our iPhone, our iPad, whatever. It's we're remarkably fortunate on that. And I'll just want to confirm what you have gone over there. Be objective when you watch yourself.
Yeah.
And one of the things that happened with me one time, and I've explained it on this program before, but I had done a presentation, and this was back in the days when our presentations by the sponsor would be recorded on videotape. And I did 4 1-hour programs. I agreed to the recording if they let me have copies to take home, which they did. And I spent 4 hours, not all at one time. I think I would have gotten sick doing that. But I spent 4 hours critiquing my mannerisms, my gestures, my enunciation, and I did it very objectively, and I learned a great deal from that. So yes, you had great gifts to start with, but Terry, you have to develop those gifts, and not only develop them initially, you keep doing that. And one of the things that you and I have had the privilege of doing is watching many experts in action, right?
Hmm. Yeah, it's good to do that. And I think that's important to continue to see those experts, be willing to part with your coins and your capital so that you can be there with them. You want to be in those places. That's why it's important to be involved in professional organizations, to be involved in groups where you're taking courses and you're learning. Continually learn, and school is never out for the professional, as they say. I think it was Cavett Robert said that, one of the founders of the National Speakers Association. And we want to continue to learn, to grow, and particularly in our world that is changing very rapidly. Learning how to learn and how to learn rapidly is a very important skill.
And you do that so well. Terry, more questions. Be back in a minute.
Do you wish you felt confident about giving speeches? Do you want to deal with difficult people constructively? And what about becoming more persuasive in sales? Then keep listening now to Dr. Bill Lampton. He spent 20 years in management, so he knows the communication skills you need for success. I urge you to call the Biz Communication Guy today for a no-cost but very valuable 30-minute discussion about your communication challenges. Call now, 678-316-4300. Again, that's 678-316-4300.
Terry, we were talking about video, and that brings me to ask you for feedback about technology. Let's say that I'm an entrepreneur and that I come to you, and I know many entrepreneurs come to you for coaching. And an entrepreneur comes to you and says, well, Terry, I really want to succeed in my business communication. But Terry, I'm just not geared toward technology. So why should I fool with podcasting and video production and all these other things which you and others are teaching? Why is that so important for me, Terry? I don't have that knack. I don't have that interest. Can't I get by without that? What would you say? How would you advise them?
I would say, first of all, I understand, because sometimes technology can be a little bit overwhelming. It can be intimidating because it's something that is literally a different language, and it's a different way of doing things. But I would say you're already interfacing with technology. You use a car, probably. That's technology. You use a stove, probably. You have a light switch. That's technology. You use a toilet. That's technology. All of these things are important technologies. And what we need to do is to realize they are there to help us. And sometimes they can be a little bit confusing, but we can learn. And the good news is as you learn, you come alive even more. You're stimulating your mind to learn new. And new is very important to keep our brains alive, particularly as we get older. We find that by using the technology and stretching our brains, we can do better. And a good way to do that is you can sit down, and today we go to the University of YouTube. There's wonderful videos out there on a host of different topics. Just a few moments ago, before we came on here, I was in getting some lunch in our kitchen, and I'd have my computer there watching some videos on AI, artificial intelligence. I'm watching some of the latest cutting edge ideas, taking notes on that, and then I practice it, and this is how we learn. But I think also getting a coach can be very helpful. Working with someone who's helping you, that can help you to learn what is important from their point of view, that's a good thing. You see it from different points of view, you hear it, and you need someone who can be there for you and that suits your style. So I would say the technology fear is understandable. We understand that people are going to wonder about it, but don't let that hold you back. In today's world, you need to know it if you're going to get ahead in business. Now, if you've got more money than you know what to do with and you want to sit on the beach, sip pina coladas all day, well, okay, but also I'm no medical person, but they tell us that's not good for you either. So getting a use of technology, finding what's available and how it can help you, I'd say is going to help you in the world of business particularly, but also just in living a more enriched and full life.
One of your examples is one that I want to underscore, where you say you drive a car, don't you? Uh, Contemporary new cars now, the dashboard is not like that simple dashboard that we had when we first started owning cars. There are all kinds of visual aids there, such as, for example, if you want to back up the car, you have a great map. And if you're using uh, uh, ways or something like that for directions. You just follow that on that screen, and it's not something the day that you get the car that you know how to do, but you learn it. I have to admit, and it's okay to admit it, Terry, that I was in management for 20 years. And during that 20 years in management, I was very afraid of technology. Because my college presidents, where I was the vice president, they would say, you need to go to this training class. And I would go to a training class, but I never really applied it. And how did I get by? Okay, I had somebody to delegate it to. Guess what? When I became an entrepreneur, there was nobody to delegate it to. And how did I learn it? I did exactly what you're saying. I found the right coaches. You, Terry Brock, worked with me many, many times. Mike Stewart also has worked with me. I went to some training sessions, and it's not as though you learn it and you got it, because as you say, there's so many new things that come along, and those new things are very valuable. And they're sure it's a challenge to learn it, but did we ride a bike successfully the first time we tried that? I doubt it.
Yeah, we've got to keep working at it and stay with it, because that's how we get better, and it's how we really live a life that is enriched.
Terry, you have, as I mentioned in the introduction, you have been recognized by your professional speaking peers as the kingpin of the profession. You've won the very highest awards and certifications that you could win. So all of us who are listening know that we need to make presentations. You don't have to be a professional speaker to have to make presentations. You might have to make a presentation in a sales effort. You may have to make a presentation training new employees. You may have to make a presentation making a report to your board. There's so many ways that business leaders are going to need to know how to make presentations. So, not talking now about professional speakers, but let's talk about executives, managers, supervisors who would come to Terry Brock and say, gosh, Terry, I need to know how to present my ideas clearly, compellingly, and persuasively. What steps would you take them through, Terry?
Well, I think there's a lot we can learn. I would take exception. I don't think I'm a kingpin in that, but I've learned a few things along the way. And some of the things I've learned is what you want to do is you want to find out what is available, how you can become a better presenter. There's many good books out there. There are many good videos on YouTube that you can watch. There's going to be some that are not as good. There's going to be some that are. So for a limited budget, that's a great way to do it. And if you have a large budget, that's still something very good. But I'd recommend take a look at getting a coach, someone who can help you, that can show you what to do, how to do it. It's something that you do very well, Bill. I work with as well, showing people how to do it. A lot of executives and what I've done that are in AT&T. When I worked with them as editor-in-chief for their largest blog, was helping on that. We had particular executives we'd work with that were doing very well in their business, in their business skills, wonderful people. But there's a little bit of nervousness that comes when they realize, okay, the camera's rolling. Well, getting coaching on that can really help. Getting someone to help you. As a matter of fact, what we do, even though, yes, I'm in the Speaker Hall of Fame, many, many times we get together with other members of the Speaker Hall of Fame and we look at each other. It's one thing for someone to give a speech and people come up and they'll say, oh, you did a good job. Good speech. That's nice. And it makes us feel good. But even better is when someone can say, I like what you did on that. And you know that story you were telling about the porcupine and the walrus, or that story? That was really good. And I would emphasize that one line you had there about, but don't touch that thing, or, whatever it is, work with me on this. So whatever it is, they do that. And they also say, that other part there about the porcupine doing that didn't really come across well. You might figure that you could just cut that part out. You need someone that can help you on that. You want to sit down and you want to look at the video, record that, and you can go back over it. Matter of fact, a really good tool right now that I recommend strongly is called Yoodli. That's Yoodli. and it's at udly.ai. It's artificial intelligence.
What does Udly accomplish? What does using that accomplish for us, Terry?
It gives you the feedback that you need with a transcript, with your audio, your video, and it shows your or all those filler words, those kinds of
Like,
words that go
let's
in there.
put like in there too.
I asked them specifically to do that, and they did. So it cites every time you use the word like, which is good.
How
It
about
also
perfect?
shows you where you are on the screen. Am I too far over here or
Yeah,
over here, or I'm
yeah.
too far down? It comes back and shows you that. It shows you if you're talking too fast. And it's an AI robot that's doing it. So you don't have the human emotion of, oh, he's just criticizing me. And it's a great tool that many speech coaches are using. Not that it's taking the place of a speech coach. No. An analogy we like to use is it's like going to get your lab work done before you go see the doctor. Then the doctor studies your lab work, studies all the stuff to make sure that all systems are operating within normal parameters. And the doctor might say, your woogamawagers, that's a technical medical term, okay? Yeah, woogamawagers over here, not doing as good as your thingamaboggers over here, okay? And do that. So Udly is a great little tool. And by the way, the cost is pretty reasonable, free. And it gives you the ability to really get better as an individual who's speaking professionally, because your career often will rise or fall based on how well you communicate and how well you come across with your message.
You're so right about that. And I want to underscore that people who, for example, when they were growing up, always sat at the back of the classroom because they didn't want to be called on. And when they're in committee meetings or when they're in board meetings and they've got great ideas, but they say, I wouldn't know how to do it. It's so important to develop that skill. And that's why I tag myself as the biz communication guy, because helping people do that is what you and I love doing. Terry, we're going to have to wind up in a minute, but we've talked about coaches. I've mentioned that you and Mike Stewart are great coaches of mine. I know that you've relied on coaches across the way. One I remember you talking about that was very influential for you when you were in college was Dr. Thomas Stanley. And who are some of the coaches? And we've got a couple of minutes to mention them.
Well, Tom Stanley he was a marvelous professor that I had at Georgia State University in my MBA program. And he helped us to learn so many nuances of what to do, what not to do. And when I graduated, he went on later to write a series of books called The Millionaire Next Door, and had a tremendous amount of success with that. And I know it's because he had me as a student. At least that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. It was because of me, but he did very well. And other coaches have helped me, people from time to time that I've been able to work with. I had a chance one time to spend about an hour and a half or so with a guy named Wayne Dyer.
Oh my gosh.
Was a psychologist. And he just, Wayne and me in a hotel room doing an interview with him and talking about life and many things. One of the things that he told me I still do today. He said he would get up at 4 a.m., do his exercise, do his work and his study, and it really made a difference. And it hit me. I thought, gee, Wayne Dyer doing that. I'm going to have to pay attention to that and look at it. So that was a really good thing. I feel I had some coaching recently when I had a chance to be hired by and work for a guy named Carlos Slim. Carlos Slim is a wonderful man, very, very rich. He was the richest man in the world from 2010 to 2013. And I got a chance to work with him for a few days for an event down in Colombia, in Bogota. And I learned and see how this man who had billions of dollars, but so gracious and kind and always learning, still learning, taking notes. I was the opening keynote presenter for this group, and the closing keynote, or the closing speaker, was Ivan Duque, the current, at that time, president of Colombia. And so I got a chance to work with them and see it. But I see these people have taught me, and I've been so grateful to learn from them. And I'm still learning. Matter of fact, after 40 years in my professional speaking business, Bill, I think I'm off to a really good start, and I've got a long way to go.
That's the attitude that keeps us improving right there. Terry, this has been just exactly what I expected, because I've known you and respected your work and benefited from your work for so long, and also from our personal friendship. Certainly, our viewers and our podcast listeners will want your contact information. So please give that to us.
Well, I've got the various social media presence, and website is probably the easiest because you find it all there. And that's at terrybrock.com. And I'll spell that because they can be spelled differently. Terry is spelled Terry, and Brock is spelled the right way, Brock. So terrybrock.com, and you'll find all the contact information there.
Thank you, Terry. And I encourage our viewers and listeners to get in touch with Terry, to study all that he has available. There's plenty on YouTube. Get affiliated with Terry Brock. You will benefit just as I and many, truly thousands of people have. And now that Terry has shared his contact information, I'm delighted to share mine. The Biz Communication Guy. So logically, my website is B-I-Z, bizcommunicationguy.com. And my YouTube channel, which I invite you to go to, is listed. You can go to the search screen there and type in Bill Lampton, Ph.D. And then, of course, I want, after all that, please give me a phone call, 678-316-4300. Again, 678-316-4300. I want to talk to you about your communication challenges and problems and how I can assist you with them. Terry Brock, what closing comments would you have for us from this stimulating, scintillating, and highly informative conversation?
Well, I guess we could go for a long time on that, but I'll say this, or those of you watching this, remember that communication is something that is an ongoing learning process. No matter where we are, we can always get better. As a matter of fact, we want to always get better. So pour yourself into the literature that's available. Today, yes, look at YouTube. There's a lot of wonderful ideas there. Yes, stay in tune with the Biz Communication Guy, Bill Lampton. He knows what he's talking about, and it's an honor to be with him. And keep growing. Keep pushing yourself to get better so that you'll be able to help the world and be able to do more in a wonderful way using the live and let live philosophy of helping others, not initiating force or coercion, the non-aggression principle, living life peacefully and abundantly. I think that's the way to do it.
Well said, as always. Many thanks to Terry Brock for honoring us today with not only being with us, but for the terrific advice that he has given us. Thanks to those of you who were with us on video and on the podcast. Be with us again for future editions of the Biz Communication Show. I'm your host, Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy.